By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may seal this union with a sacred kiss.
What if love could wade through time, distance, and fate, and still find its way home? Welcome to our channel where every story is a journey of hope, devotion, and everlasting love. In today's touching tale, we follow Ly Tieu Nu, a woman who spends her days dreaming of the moment Truong returns. She imagines their sacred wedding in a sunlit church, blessed by God and witnessed by their little son Dewey, who leads the way with petals of love. Subscribe now and join us as we step into this heartwarming story of reunion, faith, and a love destined by heaven. Every evening, as the sun began to dip behind the golden horizon, Ly Tieu Nu would sit quietly by the old wooden window, her fingers gently tracing the edge of the frame worn smooth by time. The wind carried with it the faint scent of jasmine from the garden, the very flowers Truong once planted before he left. The house felt too still without him, every sound amplified, the ticking of the clock, the rustling of leaves outside, even the slow beating of her own heart as she waited. Each passing day felt like a thread in the long tapestry of longing, woven with faith, patience, and hope. She often whispered to herself, "One day he will return. One day we will stand before God together." When the sky turned amber, she would close her eyes and imagine Truong walking through the church doors, his familiar smile warming the coldest corners of her heart. In that sacred vision, she was not the lonely woman by the window anymore, but a bride, radiant in white, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for his. The church bells would toll softly in the distance, their melody echoing through the valley like a blessing from heaven. She could almost hear the murmurings of the congregation, the gentle prayers of the faithful, and the voice of the priest welcoming them into the house of God. In her solitude, Ly Tieu Nu found comfort in preparing for that day. She often visited the small chapel near her home, lighting candles beneath the statue of the Virgin Mary. Each flickering flame carried a silent prayer, for Truong's safety, for their love to endure, and for the strength to keep believing. She often imagined walking down the aisle one day, the marble floor gleaming under her feet, sunlight pouring through the stained glass windows, painting their path in shades of blue and gold. That thought alone filled her heart with warmth. Even when the nights grew cold and the moonlight bathed the empty courtyard, she never stopped waiting. The stars above seemed to whisper promises of reunion, and she would smile softly, holding on to faith like a sacred vow. For Ly Tieu Nu, love was not just a feeling. It was a devotion, a prayer whispered every morning and every night, bound by hope and blessed by heaven. And so she waited, not in despair, but in quiet grace, for the day Truong would finally come home, and together they would walk hand in hand into the light of their promised forever. In her dreams, the day always began with sunlight streaming through the tall stained glass windows of the church, scattering soft hues of crimson, gold, and sapphire across the polished floor. Ly Tieu Nu stood there in her flowing white gown, the delicate lace brushing gently against her skin, and her heart trembling like the wings of a dove. Beside her, Truong appeared, calm, handsome, his eyes filled with the kind of tenderness that could melt away years of distance and longing. The moment he reached out and took her hand, the world seemed to fall silent. Time, for once, bowed before love. They began walking slowly down the aisle together, hand in hand, each step echoing softly like a heartbeat beneath the arched ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and roses, flowers she had always dreamed would fill their wedding day. Around them, the congregation stood in quiet reverence. Familiar faces glowed with smiles of joy, and the gentle whisper of prayers floated through the sacred hall. Ly Tieu Nu could hear the soft rustle of her gown, the low hum of the choir, and above it all, the steady rhythm of Truong's breathing beside her, real, steady, alive. As they reached the altar, the priest lifted his hands in blessing, his voice resonant and kind. The solemn words of the marriage rite carried through the church, blending with the faint shimmer of sunlight dancing on the cross above them. Ly Tieu Nu's heart swelled with emotion as Truong gazed into her eyes, their fingers intertwined, promising to walk together through every joy and every sorrow that life might bring. In that instant, she felt heaven itself draw near, as though the angels leaned closer to witness their vow. When the priest finally declared them husband and wife, the church bells rang with glorious harmony. The sound soared into the sky like wings of light, carrying with it every prayer she had ever whispered during those lonely nights. Truong leaned close, his breath warm against her ear, and whispered, "We made it, my love." Tears glistened on her lashes, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were the sacred water of fulfillment, washing away every year of waiting. Outside, the doors of the church swung open, and sunlight poured over them like divine grace. Hand in hand, Ly Tieu Nu and Truong stepped forward into the world, not as two souls longing across distance anymore, but as one heart, one faith, one love, finally bound under the eyes of God. Just as the church bells continued to echo through the morning air, a small figure appeared at the entrance. Their little boy Dewey, dressed smartly in a tiny black vest and crisp white shirt, holding a wicker basket filled with delicate petals. His innocent laughter rippled through the church, soft and pure, like the melody of spring water over smooth stones. Everyone turned to watch him, their smiles widening as he began to scatter handfuls of white and pink rose petals along the aisle, his steps light and confident. Each petal drifted gently to the ground, marking the path that his parents, his heroes, would soon walk together. Ly Tieu Nu's heart ached sweetly at the sight. It was the moment she had imagined countless times. Her little Dewey, the living symbol of their love, guiding the way for his mother and father to step into a future blessed by heaven. Truong's hand tightened around hers, his voice low and full of emotion as he whispered, "He's grown so much. Look at him, our little man." She smiled through her tears, her heart swelling with a love so deep it felt as though the entire church could feel it too. As Dewey reached the altar, he turned and looked back at them, his dark eyes bright with pride. "Come on, Mama, Papa," he called out, his voice ringing clear and joyous. The congregation chuckled softly, and Ly Tieu Nu couldn't help but laugh, her nerves melting into pure happiness. Together, she and Truong began their slow walk toward him, the hem of her gown gliding over the petals their son had laid. It felt as if every flower carried a story, a memory of the days they had endured apart, and the miracle of finding their way back to each other. The priest watched them with gentle affection as the family stood together at the altar, a trinity of love, father, mother, and child, framed by light and faith. When he lifted his hands to bless them, a beam of sunlight pierced through the stained glass above, bathing all three of them in gold. It was as though heaven itself had opened its arms. At that moment, Ly Tieu Nu knew this was not just a wedding, but a divine reunion. Her son, born of love and raised in hope, had led them to this sacred promise. And as Truong kissed her hand beneath the ringing of the bells, she silently thanked God for the grace that had carried them through, from separation to reunion, from longing to eternity, as a family made whole beneath the watchful eyes of heaven.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Mí Tiểu Ngữ Review. Vậy là trong câu chuyện của chúng ta ngày hôm nay thì Lý Tiểu Nữ đã có những giây phút tưởng tượng ra lúc cô và Trường cùng nhau làm lễ cưới trong nhà thờ với sự chúc phúc của Thiên Chúa cũng như của tất cả mọi người có tham dự thánh lễ ngày hôm đó. Đó chính là một điều mà Lý Tiểu Nữ đã mơ ước từ lâu. Và liệu rằng mơ ước này của cô có sắp thành hiện thực hay không? Tất cả sẽ được hé lộ vào các tập tiếp theo sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Lý Tiểu Nữ Review. Các bạn hãy bấm vào nút subscribe để đăng ký kênh, nhận được thông báo mới nhất về các tập phim sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh nha. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.